Hey, what's up guys, off-brand Overwatch Central here, and today we are going to talk about how to effectively communicate in Overwatch. Communication is a very crucial part of the game. Having superior team play through communication can win you a lot of games, especially on lower ranks, but in higher ranks in particular everything becomes a matter of min-maxing. You want to make sure you are mechanically on point but also not neglect callouts and the like. Overwatch is a game that caters to quite a wide audience. It is very well possible that you can beat a team that is clearly mechanically superior by having superior communication. So even when you feel like you're not a very strong player yet, optimizing the way you talk to your team might help you grind a few more ranks, so let's get right into it. The first thing you want to do before even getting into a match is go into your options menu. There you go to audio and look for the team chat tab. Make sure this tab is the only one that is set to auto join. So make sure that the moment you get into a match you are automatically joining the voice chat that is most beneficial to the entire team. Also, if you play with friends, do make sure that you all either have the setting ticked or join manual at the start of the match. Unfortunately, Blizzard prioritizes comfort over competitive gameplay, so there's no way to guarantee that everyone is on voice comms in a ranked match. However, by you joining immediately, you contribute well to increasing your chances of winning. The first thing you should do when joining a match is checking if everyone is on voice comms. Give it a few seconds before saying anything. After all, some people might not know of the automatic setting and have to do it manually, or their hard drive just isn't as fast as yours. If you see that not everyone is on voice comms, you can either generally or specifically ask people to join. The worst thing you can do is sounding bossy when you do so. People don't like getting bossed around by strangers on the internet, so be polite when you do so. If they do not respond, maybe add that it would help coordinate ultimates. Once you do have a majority of people in voice chat, do feel free to be the first to say hi. Some people are uncomfortable being the first to talk, so breaking the ice yourself could help. Also, not everyone's gonna want to talk at all, and that is fine. Maybe they had a rough day at work and don't feel like talking. As long as they're in voice chat and listen to callouts, it's good. In those situations where only few people talk, you should take it upon yourself to keep an eye out on your six and call out flanks if need be. Depending on the map, before the run starts, do make sure you have a basic plan laid out. Communicating what kind of comp you want to go for is certainly mandatory, but also deciding which way to go. You can simply ask something like, where do you guys want to go, or should we go top left, and wait for a response. You can try to be more decisive and just say, let's go top right, for example. However, I generally try to stay away from anything that makes me sound bossy. While yes, in a team that listens but doesn't communicate, it might be of benefit, but most of the time I prefer everyone to work as a team. I'm currently playing in Diamond and trying my best to make my way into Masters, and in those games people are generally aware of what they have to do, and we don't need a leader, so to speak. On lower ranks that might look a little different. I know that what carried me from Platinum to Diamond in Season 2 was putting on the mantle of shot caller. It is important to pick a hero that is suited for this role, however, like for example McCree with his frontline burst DPS or Zenyatta with his Discord orb. When shot calling, it is important for you to follow up on your own commands, or else people will feel ripped off when they're the only ones going for the target you called out. Alright, back to our standard game procedure. Once you made up your mind over which comp you want to play and where you want to go, the game should be starting. What happens a lot, even in higher elo, is people getting stuck in a choke on their own accord. It is always good to remind people, let's not just stand in the choke, we're soaking damage for no reason. Also, pay attention to the kill feed. If you see that your team got a kill, quickly say so. We got a pick, let's push. If your push did not succeed, do say something like, we can't be indecisive in the choke, we gotta push them. If it didn't succeed because the enemies overpowered you, suggest to push from another side. You may have noticed how in all these callouts there is a clear emphasis on we. Never say something like, Reinhardt, you can't be indecisive, or I just killed two, let's go. First off, Overwatch is a team game and you should treat it as such. If a push failed, don't immediately put blame onto someone. If you generally called that the problem was that the push was too slow, people will generally question their action and said push. The Reinhardt is likely to realize himself that it is him who has to initiate the attack. Only when you are in a situation where your team is failing repeatedly, you should speak to the individual. Again, it is important to not just blatantly put blame on someone because, well, such is the nature of the human being, they will get very defensive very quickly. A little trick I like to use is the implication that the player has already done the right thing, but not to the extent you require them to. Like for example, Reinhardt, we need you to push a little faster. The implication being that they already pushed, hence did the right thing, even when in reality they were just standing in the choke soaking damage needlessly. A lot of communication of which comes down to make sure that people don't feel like you're saying they're bad, because egos can be very fragile, so do make sure you stay as polite as possible at all times. Now, we had a series of very specific calls on how to handle communication at the start of a match. What I'd like to focus on next is the general nature of a call out. The problem with humans in general is that when you ask for action to a mass of people, only few, if any, will feel responsible to answer the call, which is why it's very important to make sure that your calls express a certain level of urgency. First and foremost, make sure your calls are short and concise. Here are a couple examples. Reaper above us probably has ult. Genji behind us, watch out. Tracer on me, and let's group up. All of these calls are short and everyone immediately understands the message. What I've seen players do way too often is making the calls unnecessarily long. Reaper is above us, I think he might have his ultimate, so be careful, for example. The statement in itself is not wrong, and if you're in a calm situation you can certainly get away with it, but if you're in the heat of battle and everything happens very quickly, it's even more important to make sure you get your message out as fast as possible and then have a clear voice channel for further calls from other teammates. The only problem with all these statements is, as already hinted before, that they don't express any level of urgency. In those cases we'll have to modify them slightly. Reaper above us, don't stack, he might have ult. While this call is longer than the one previously, it tells you exactly what is the case and what has to happen in the right order. The most important thing for a team to know is that Reaper is above you. That alone can tell a player a lot. Not stacking is the next most important thing, because even if it didn't click in your teammates' heads that he might have his ult, they might hear the call to split and might listen regardless. And lastly, the reason why your team should split. The next one's gonna be really important for supports. Modify your callouts for enemy flankers. If you just say, Genji behind us, again, in a lot of circumstances, nobody's gonna feel responsible to turn around and take them out. If, on the other hand, you say, Genji on me, help, players will realize that their support is about to go down and they're likely to turn around and help. In the case of your team not reacting quickly enough, you should try to change your positioning to stay closer to your team so enemy flankers can't get to you as easily and your team can react faster to set callouts. So for all of your callouts, there are 4 things that are important. What is happening? What should your team be doing? How urgent is the situation? And optionally, more details on upcoming threats such as enemy ultimates. I have already said that you should always try to be polite, and here's a little more detail. We all know that having bad teammates is frustrating, however just getting angry or pissy isn't gonna make them play any better. The moment you get toxic and start putting blame on people and whatnot, you decrease your chances of winning. Being toxic and pissy does absolutely nothing to improve your chances of winning and contributes a lot to you losing. I made an entire video dedicated to toxicity in Overwatch, so I'm not gonna get any more in detail about it in this video. On the other hand, being too nice is also not a good thing. You might wonder how that makes sense. Well, let me tell you. If your team is already not doing well and you're being the always positive nice guy, then people will get sick of your voice very quickly and you ultimately cause the opposite of what you try to do. While I'm not here trying to tell you not to have fun, this guide is very tryhard orientated, so do make sure you only use voice chat if necessary and don't clog it with either too positive or too negative things. And most importantly, just don't talk too much, period. If you have somebody in your team who's any of those things, he won't shut up, he's constantly whining, complaining and being toxic, just mute them as fast as possible and suggest your team to do the same. The moment you engage people like this, you not only waste your time, but you also open yourself up to be tilted by them. If you tilt, you play worse, and chances are that they had nothing constructive or useful to say anyway. So do try to encourage your team to not focus on their nonsense and just mute the guy. Also, tell people to report them after the match. And that concludes our guide. Let's summarize what we have been talking about today. Make sure you always join voice chat for every competitive match. Either do it manually or set up your options to do it automatically. Encourage your team to join voice chat as well at the start of the match, even if they only listen and don't talk. To encourage them talking, be the first to say hi or something. Communicate a game plan before the match starts to make sure your team moves in together and doesn't split needlessly. If you want to be a shot caller, you have to play the right heroes and behave like a true shot caller as well. Doing that may help greatly in directing your team at lower ranks. However, in higher ranks where people generally know what has to be done, you make sure you don't come off as too bossy and treat everyone equally. Don't ever put blame on somebody specifically, be polite and don't get toxic or pissy. If somebody on your team does any of those things, mute them and encourage your team to do the same immediately. Make sure your calls are short, concise, understandable, and also make sure that you communicate a certain level of urgency if need be. And lastly, don't talk too much one way or another, even if you're trying to be positive. I am aware that in this guide I may make it look like communication is way more complicated than it is, but in reality most of it has to do with your attitude. I've been going very in-depth about explaining my reasoning behind why I communicate the way I do. Some people will appreciate it, others will find it odd, and that is fine. I just hope that at the end of the day, this video helped you in some way, shape, or form. Do feel free to drop me a like if you have enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I hope to see you guys next time.
Light.
God damn, she survived.